Now, I didn't do it on camera, but earlier when I was thinking about how to make the video, I kind of pre-cut the end of my wire. Okay, and this is some SBT2 I think it looks more like 18 than 16. I bought some 16 to redo for the pedal and the motor, but I think this is some old 18 wire gauge AWG 18. It's good for 300 volts, so I'm not too worried about it being undersized. I'm not sure what this gauge of wire is, the old, if it's 18 or 16. Looks kind of thin to me, so it might be. But anyway, I kind of measured this to see when it goes in here, you know, how much do I need to get to the spring, and I just cut them just a little bit longer. So this one is going to be up here. Let's see how this went in there. Right, fits in with that top, and this is going to come in. So I need not that much, because it's going to be a tight fit in there. So where I want to strip it, I think, is where my thumbnail is. So I've got too much. I got too much going on there. I'll have too much poking through the spring. So there we go. So, because I don't need much to go through that spring, just a little bit. Yep. Definitely wanting to strip like it's 18 gauge. So let's get it on. Let's put that little spring on there and see what we think. See if I can twist it up a little bit. So I got to keep this part away from it. I got to keep this other lead away from it so it doesn't melt. Right? I think that's how it was, just sitting up like that. All you people that are very good at your soldering, you're probably enjoying this. Are you on like Facebook or Twitter? You ought to see this guy trying to do a simple solder move. Hey, but at least I'm doing it, right? And you could skip over this, you know, if you already know about all this stuff. You can just say adios and go to the next chapter. Right? Okay. So, let's see if I can prime this up a little bit again. Clean this up a little bit. I think I got some debris from removing that other stuff there. Alright, let's do that. Now that that looks like a clean, shiny tip. That's going to be ready. I'll get a little bit of this flux and put on here so that hopefully it'll pull that solder right in. And I need solder too, don't I? Okay, I got some little thin, quick solder here that I'm going to try, because this is just such, you know, it's like a drop of solder is all that it's going to be. Let's see if I can heat that spring up, and then get a couple of drops of solder right on there. That's it. Let that cool. I don't mind that it twisted because I can twist the wire a little bit, so I don't mind that, you know. But I want to get enough to make sure it's a very good connection. But I didn't want to melt the insulation, and I didn't want to solder this whole rooster tail thing here, because that soldered wire is just harder to cut off. It's not looking too bad in my opinion. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. There we go. Let's see how we got here. And where's the thing we're going to put it in? It's kind of like right there. It sits up in there, something like that. So I think we're going to fly with that one. Okay, let's take a look at the other lead now so I can get a feel for the length. Now this spring holder sits in an area right here that's depressed, and it has the tail of the spring coming out here to be soldered, and of course the spring sits down in these special little grooves, but I just want to kind of get a feel for the length of it here so that I can get my lead up in there like so, where it's going to fit, I believe, and see just about like that. And then this one is going to go down in the groove for it. Whoop! Finicky little pieces, aren't they? Especially for an old fumble finger guy like me. I think I'll come just behind where I originally marked it a little. And again, I'm going to twist those wires in there. With all this manipulating I'm done, my soldering is holding up real well. I got a nice hot solder joint there, it looks like. Yeah, I think it'd be tough to get 16 gauge wire through these holes anyway. Darn, I got one little lead I missed. I'm really wrapping this tight and it still doesn't want to go through that little hole here. There we go. So it's going to be like that, eh? Get a little bit of flux on there again. That worked well for me before. Okay. Where's that thin solder? So I'll try soldering this on now. Alright, see if my tip is still looking clean. I'll just put a dab of solder on there. Try and come down in here, right on the spring where that's coming out. The wire's coming through. And get some solder right on there. That still looks kind of sloppy there, doesn't it? There we go. That looks a little bit cleaner. Still soldered on there. Okay, well, we'll see how I did. Okay, now moving on to the next tricky little maneuver. We have to get these springs back in to the housing here, and you see I've got this one in with the spring holder. I've kind of pushed the curled shape into the cutout for it, and I have the straight soldered lead down here, and I'm going to try and push this insulation on the wire into the cutout space for it, and then that's going to leave us with this spring on the front here to put in. Let's see if I can get a little bit more like so. When you go to push these springs back in, you want to turn the key so that they're not on the metal connector in there. See that shiny? You want to turn it so that they're resting on the off position, which would be just against the base without the metal key. There's a little bit more room for the spring, is that's why I say that. And I don't know, you can, I've done this different. These have to be like, maybe you can see this one is very flush down in there. It's nice and tight. It's right down in there. You know, when the key turns, you see how the spring makes metal contact, no contact. Metal contact, no contact. So that's just your on and off. So if you were just doing the springs and you didn't have all this wire tied to it, it would be easy. But we can't have easy. So you see how tricky this is. You see why a lot of people may say, oh, to heck with this, I'm just going to buy one of those aftermarket lights and be done with it. And you also see why the first thing I do is check the existing wire, because if any part of it's good, it's going to be easier to splice on and run a new piece back down to the terminal than to disassemble a light and unsolder the old wire, resolder, get this all back together and fitting as nice as they had it. Oh, sorry. I tried something else. You know, I've always stuck one end or the other in, and then I realized it makes the spring at an angle to the grooves it's supposed to go in. So what I just did was I laid the spring, aligned it on top of the cutouts, and I tried to kind of push it in with my thumbs and down keeping it flat, and it did. It just kind of popped right in. So my mistake, to where I've done this in the past and always kind of put the key side in, the switch side in, and then tried to force this all in. I've done some of the other, like on this one, I put this side in here, and then that just easily went into place. But anyway, try that. If you're going to do this, get the spring flat up above the grooves, and kind of compress it a little bit, because this end especially wants to stick out. So just start compressing it in a little bit while you're pushing it down evenly, and it did. It went in nicely. I'll have to remember that if I ever lose my mind and decide to do this again. So now look, this is 18 gauge wire, SPT2. I'm thinking, I'm pretty sure it's 18, and if this was 16, I don't think the cord would fit in here at all. The insulation, this modern insulation is so thick. But like, look at this cord on my soldering iron, right? That takes a lot more amps than the sewing machine does, and look how much smaller this cord is. So I would definitely say don't get 18 or 16, because I don't think you're going to get it to fit into the space here for the cord very well, or even down into the grooves. Now, once we think we want to put the base of the socket on here, and of course there's a space up here for this spring holder. I've got to kind of line it and see if we can get it, and then we've got to twist that cord a little bit and get it, see how well we can get it inside the end to get it flat. And that's pretty flat along here, and it's pretty flat along here, and there's some minor spacing here which I expect. I would expect that until I can compress that cord. Now, I don't know if I can pre-compress it, because we got to put a snap ring on there, right? Easy does it. This is Bakelite, right? Okay. I'm just going to lay a piece of this out and kind of try and get a length, general length for the wire, and then I'm going to add a couple more inches and cut this so I don't have so much. Now, if you remember these snap rings, right, these round snap rings, this got bent for me trying to put it on there before. Now, I've heard people, they slip it over the wire, and they have some kind of a tube, like a plastic tube or wood tube or even a metal tube, that's a little bit bigger than the molding here, but a little bit smaller than the snap ring, so they can kind of push it on here like a socket and push it, boom, snap it over. I don't have anything like that, and I just had to work it on by forcing it with whatever I could. And I've had to do stuff like this with old telephone splices and other projects that I've had, and it's real painstaking. Now it can be done. I mean, I did it. You saw I had it all back together, right? But what I want to show you here is a modern snap ring that has external eyelets. But I don't want this to come apart. I've got it on here pretty good. So to hold it at this point, I'm just going to put a plastic tie strap on it. And I'm going to put it behind the key because I want the space up here to be empty for my snap rings. And I'm just going to see if I can get this on here and use it to hold the pieces you know, together while I do this other work. Okay, then I can relax and I don't have to worry about it coming apart and my spring popping out and all that kind of stuff. So where's my, usually what I do is I would go to the hardware store with like a spring, and I would find a modern spring with these eyelets as close as I can to the same size, and I'd buy it. And they can be anywhere from, you know, 65 cents to $2.85 for a big one. So I just looked on, I don't remember if it was Amazon or eBay, and I bought this package. It was like $8 with free shipping, and I honestly don't know how many. They probably say how many here, but it's got little dinky tiny ones up to about 1 1/4 inch. And of course they were all mixed up in shipping, you know, but I've got probably all the snap rings I'll ever need in my life now for about $8. Okay, and I wanted to kind of squeeze this one, if I can, without smashing my fingers, back closer to what it was before I spread it so far apart with the screwdrivers I was using to get it back on. It came off fairly well. Not the easiest thing I ever took off, that's for sure. But putting it back on was a real wrestling match. You know, what I'm trying to do is get this pretty close to the original. Never mind. I found in my new ones, I found a snap ring that I just held up to the old little snap ring, and I said, yeah, this looks about right. So I was going to try and measure the old, and let me get my little measuring thing here, because I know somebody's going to ask me, what size is that? And I didn't measure it before. So let's see. I'll measure the diameter here, because that's usually how they sell them, I think. So it's 0.45 inch diameter. I would say right around there. And let's see if I can get you 29/64 in fraction, 11.7 millimeter, more or less. And these are kind of flexible. You know, if you get one that's too big, it's just going to be too big. If you get one that's a tiny bit too small, it'll just stay spread more when you put it on. And of course, you know, you have to have some kind of a little tool. So there's a snap ring tool, and I had bought this a year or two ago for some other projects just at the hardware store, and I got the plier and 4 different tips, and the tips are just pointed or straight or curved, you know. And so I'm going to show you how to put that on. I'm going to slip the snap ring over. Now they have snap rings where these eyelets are on the inside for certain applications, and the way you put the tip onto the plier like these, when I squeeze it, it's going to spread the snap ring. Okay, it's going to spread it apart. But I could have installed that the plier part on the end to do just the opposite. Once your pins are in the eyelets of that and you squeeze the plier, it's going to spread that snap ring enough that you can slip it up over and let it go, and now you've got a good tight snap ring here. And it went ahead and finished squeezing the two sides together. Okay, and then it's sticking out of the top. Later you can push this around so those eyelets can be wherever you want. They can be on the see, I'll just do it with my thumbnail. Usually I have a little screwdriver or something, but you can spin it once it's in place so that the eyelets are on the bottom. It's going to sit like that on the back of the machine. You're not going to see it. So now I can take that off because I don't have any fear that it's going to come apart now. Snap ring's holding it very tight, and it's good to go. Phew! So I feel happy that I maybe have done the hard part with those springs inside the socket body. And I've got my small snap ring on here. Before I do any more work with this, I want to put the ring terminals on the new wire. I did one, and I thought maybe some of you would want to see this, so I'm going to do the other here. So here's the ring terminals I'm using. They're for an 8 to 10 stud, which is what I'm estimating the size to be behind the terminal connection where all these wires go. And they're made for 16 to 22 gauge wire. So they're going to work perfect. They come with this plastic cover over the part where you normally would crimp. I don't crimp these, I just solder them, but I take this plastic cover off. This is a little bulky, and when you get a whole bunch of these behind that terminal, it gets a little crowded, in my opinion. So I just take a knife and slice it. You can try just pulling it off with a plier, but for some reason I always twist when I pull, and I tend to bend the ring. So I'll just slice it a few times, and then when I pull and twist, it should come off pretty easy. I've even had them just come off from the pressure of the knife. Let's see if I did enough of that. There we go. So you see, this big old thing is covering this tiny little crimp piece. See? So like I said, if you have a crimping tool and you want to crimp it, it's okay for me. I don't do it. I'm going to put some flux onto the wire to help solder flow into there, right? And I'm just going to slip my ring terminal over that twisted wire. Oop, got one strand I missed. See if I can redo that. Make sure I got enough flux on there. There we go. So I like to just barely see the end of the copper wire coming out of that crimp area. Okay, and then I'll prep make sure my soldering iron is going to be ready. Put a little flux on it, a little solder on it, let that cook for a little bit. Take it off with some steel wool. Got a nice shiny solder loaded tip. And then I will heat the metal, not the solder. Isn't that the old story, right? Mm-hmm. Yep, I see it pushing out the... Yeah, I had plenty of flux, didn't I? Okay. Well, maybe it's better a little too much than not enough. Huh? Flux is pretty cheap. Okay. So I'm going to let that cool now. Got my nice terminal rings. Ooh, that's still hot. We're going to go with this right here. And I know I did mention that I don't crimp these. I don't find it necessary. And if I ever want to change them or change the size or anything, I can reheat the solder and use a wick and just take it off without having to cut it and shorten my wire and stuff like that. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention before we go on was when I was laying the wires in, you remember, maybe you remember, there's a black wire here longer and the little yellow wire turned up here shorter. So I want to put the black side back on terminal 3 because that's where I took it when I go to tie it down. Now these modern wires, they have an indicator on one conductor, one side, and it's usually like this one. There is a raised ridge that just runs the whole side. It's raised up, you can see it, you can feel it with your finger. The other side, the coating is smooth. Okay, so I put that raised side on the black side of the socket. So when I go to hook this up to the terminal now, I'll know that the raised side here goes onto terminal 3. And this would then be the yellow side going on to terminal 1. I clean up here from my soldering because I'm all done with soldering. And then we're going to talk about getting these rings back on and reassembling the S4 LITE. Okay, I'll reassemble the fixture now. I think these are going to work great, and for sure the wire is repaired compared to what I took out of there. So I'm going to show you how to put these larger snap rings, the original ones, back on a way you can do it. But in the end, I want to use these new snap rings I bought, because I just like using them. They're easier, and that way in the future, if the key, or what we call the switch, Singer called the key, if it ever wears out or breaks, it's going to be a lot easier to access the inside and take this apart. So mostly these before I just pushed back on here. I put the opening above the flat spot for the shade holder, and just found something to kind of put the bottom side into the groove for the ring, and then try and force the let's see, can't really get it in the groove of the ring. That's over here, these two grooves. So I guess I should say I'll start the bottom side near there, what I call the bottom, with the open side by the flat spot, because then I can get a screwdriver in it here and kind of fool around with it and try and work it up onto the ring, or the space where it clicks in. See, it's already slipped off there. But I know when I put the big rings on before, it was doable compared to that small ring at the other end. Whee, boy, that was a chore. And you see, I didn't realize it at the time, but I really bent that small snap ring apart. Let's see if my little can opener will kind of work here. Get this up onto the, up over the edge of that. Do it the other way, maybe. The snap ring tool, which I have, and I have different tips for it, didn't work that well for me. Let's see if I can just roll this up there. A good old human tool, fingernail. But you see that it's up there now. Now, the way I did this before, because you have another one back here, right? So, was I worked this out of the first snap, and I kept working it back. Whoop, shoot, just about had it there. And then I was able to push, if you saw me dismantle it, where I just pulled the shade holder. I called these a bracket before, Singer calls them a shade holder. But I just pushed it through. So you get this back, you put the other ring on here, okay, and then you can wiggle this under and you can get them installed, okay. But I'm going to take it off, as I mentioned, and I'm going to use these snap rings. And they just go a lot quicker and easier to remove. Now, one thing I am going to say before you run out and buy these, you see how this is round, and it looks pretty good. It looks pretty good on there. It's a lower profile and it's smooth. These are thinner, the ones that came in this box that I bought, and you can see they're taller. See, they're thicker up here, right? So they're going to stick out of that groove a little bit. Okay, so if you don't like that look, of course, then you're not going to want to do it, right? So for me, it's okay. I don't mind the look at all, and the light's kind of in the back of the machine and stuff like that. So, but I wanted to make you aware of that. And you can find, when I used to go to the hardware store and buy these individual, you can find thicker and you can find lower profile too. So you don't have to, you know, buy a box of these, I guess what I'd call skinnier ones, if you don't want. Or you don't have to use them at all. So I got the little pins in there. I'm going to squeeze the plier, and you see how it kind of twists a little bit too open, but then they're going to slide on much easier and go back into that ring. And they're very secure. Now you can already see that it's closed the pieces together with just one of them. Okay, but it does, can you see that? You see it does stick up, right? This looks terrible in the back of my camera. Does that help at all? Not much. Okay. Anyway, let me get the other one on here. Now these are 1 1/8 inch. And that box that I bought had little, wow, they had little tiny snap rings up to 1 1/4. And these turned out to be 1 1/8. So I was happy about that. Let's see, where's my other, what I call the ears. Okay. Now let's see if I can just push on these holders. Turn this away. If I need to, I can use the pliers and open them up a little bit and just, you know, slip the holder right on under it. But they go on pretty good. Right? So while there's only one in here, I'm going to turn my ears down to the bottom of the light where they won't be seen. See, I'll put them down here on the bracket side, the lower side. Now let's see if this one goes in as easy or if it's a little bit tougher to put in here. Okay, so far so good. Yeah, this is a little tougher, not as much space to get this second one in there. See that? Doesn't quite want to. Can I push that up on there? Get it out of the groove and push it in all at once. There. Did you see that? I pushed the snap ring up out of the groove and then pushed the end of the holder up against it and pushed them both together, and that allowed the space for the bracket to go through and then the ring to snap in. So there we've got our, oh, and these are ambidextrous, you know, it doesn't matter which side you put them on. So let me get the other parts arranged here and we'll finish this reassembly. Okay, so if I remember right, I'm going to slide this lens, the blue glass lens, into grooves on the reflector. There's little edges here, they slide together, and get those inside like so. Okay, And then with the reflector facing into the shade, I'll put that in. Line it up in the cutout for it. And it should kind of snap in there. Alright. So it looked pretty good. Yep. Okay. Then you just kind of get it slided in here where these holders go on a flat edge and pop into a ridge right here. And the little end on it pops over. So, let's see, I want to make sure this is, yeah, the bottom here. Okay, so I'll get that bottom part in and pry the holder apart. I'm a little low on this one. Let me see if I can come back up here and move it up a little. There we go. And then snap it in like so. Okay, there we go. And then if we want to install or change the bulb, you hold the socket, push the shade away with your thumb, slide it out but not off, and you can put the bulb up in here. And then bayonet style, so we'll push it in and turn it. If you push it in and turn it the wrong way, it won't turn. So push it in and turn it. And if it turns, then you lock it in the groove and you let it go. You push it back together, and you're good. Okay. Looks alright. Now, let's see, it's actually going to sit like this on the back of the machine. So I want to put my bracket back on here. And it's going to go like that. Nope. No. It's going to go like this. Right? So then it goes like that. Alright. Let's find one of my spring holding screwdrivers here, and we'll get the screws on here and get them started. There you go. Just snug these up just a little bit. Make sure I've got the bracket on firmly. Okay, I'll get the screwdriver out here and I'll try and find the mounting screw. I don't seem to see that around here. I must have it in another magnetic bowl. You know what? I think that I'm going to re-terminate the wire on this. before I hook that up, before I screw the light fixture back on. So I'll find my side with the ridges that replaces the black wire, and I'll be putting that on 3, if you remember, where I took it off terminal 3. Ridge, yep. Get it on here. Come on, baby. And then my smooth, well, I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's get this on here. If you had a switch, now imagine if you had a light switch for this machine that was on the base, like on the 221 featherweight, then you've got another set of wires you got to put on this terminal. And it starts getting a little bit crowded. But my size 810 terminal rings fit very well. So what I was going to say was the smooth wire that has the printing is replacing the yellow wire, and that goes on terminal number 1 over here. So I'll put that on terminal 1. You can kind of see why I like those little crimped disc wire terminations that Singer used, because they're very compact, you know, and they're not soldered, I don't believe, when I took one apart, but they don't have this metal tail for where we crimp the wires, you know. I guess they do have a little bit of one here, because I see a little red, but you can see that they're a lot more compact. I wish they still made something like that, but I've never been able to find anything like that. Now, of course, you would, oops, come down here. You would tuck your motor wire and your new light wire under the edge. There is a place right here that they go back in behind. See that? So you would go ahead and tuck those back there like a little wire keeper, and then you have your one mounting screw that you screw this terminal back to the body. Okay, so just wanted to show you that and remind you. Then I'm going to come back up here and I'll just screw the light back on. I mentioned before the parts manual shows a little fiber washer that goes behind here, and I do wish I had it, but I don't. I couldn't find one anywhere. I found a nice little square brass washer, and I said, oh, this is great. Maybe it's not too thick, and I'll just use it instead. So I've got something back there, you know, because the cutout is kind of square, but it's the opening is too small to go on the screw. And I don't even know where I got this. I just found it in one of my magnetic dishes. I don't even know what it's from. but won't quite do it. I guess I could try and make it bigger, but let's just go ahead and get this light up here as best as we can and mount it and tighten down, and then I can plug the line cord back into the wall, and I can give it a try and see if I messed up something or if my new wire works and the light bulb still lights. That's tightening down. That's tightening down good. Okay, so there's a look at the back. See, those are raised a little bit, as I said, but they look okay to me. It gives it a little bit of an industrial look, I guess, but I'm okay with it. I don't mind at all. Okay, I'm not going to put the cover plate back on because I just want to test the light here. So let me rearrange this a little and we'll test the light. Okay, I have the line cord carefully plugged into the terminal. Made sure none of the old junky wires were touching. And then I have the line cord plugged in to the wall. And then we'll just test the new light. And wait, what? Huh? Uh-oh. Wait a minute. I have this plugged in. I have the cord plugged in all the way to the wall outlet. My overhead light's on the same. Why isn't that working? Just kidding, just kidding. I took the incandescent bulb back out because I want to replace it with an LED. And I didn't remember that till after so there's no bulb in here, right? I figure you're probably falling asleep now after this long video, so I do something to hopefully give you a laugh. Now, let's put this back and try it again. Seal it all up tight. Ta-da! Nice white LED light. All set. So, a successful adventure with rewiring the light, the S4 Singerlight on a Singer model 1591. Thank you. And come back and see me if you think you can stand it. Take care.